How to be respected without saying a word. Imagine you walk into a room where no one wants you to win. Their smiles are knives wrapped in velvet. Their eyes are scales, weighing your worth, seeking the first tremor of insecurity. And here is the rule that decides your fate. You are not allowed to speak. How do you command respect without words? It sounds like a trick of fiction, an old riddle from a monastery. But it's not. It is a political technology. It is human psychology. And it is one of the oldest arts of power. The shiver you feel when someone enters a room and everything tightens, as if the air itself is obeying. That is not magic. It is the oldest currency of command, presence. When Niccolò Machiavelli wrote about power, he didn't give us the morality we wanted. He gave us the world as it was. Not as he dreamed it, but as he saw it from the hard stones of Florence, from corridors where promises vanish and reputations decide very real destinies. He wrote for people who would rather be obeyed than applauded, and for those who understood that words, while elegant, are often traitors. He claimed that most people judge by what they see rather than what they touch. Appearances are the theater where decisions are made, and respect, the quiet kind, is staged in silence. Think of Cesare Borgia riding into a city he meant to keep. No speeches, no endless handshakes. He let the streets speak for him. Soldiers had already been placed in the right corners, like punctuation. His coat of arms had already been painted on the arches. His tax collectors already made their rounds. A city is a living organism. He didn't introduce himself to it. He entered its bloodstream. The message was carved not in words, but in arrangement, in discipline, in the sight of serious men who obeyed without saying why. The rumor that precedes you is worth more than the speech you deliver. He knew that. Machiavelli knew that. Do you? We want to be respected by the strength of our arguments, the warmth of our personality, the cleverness of our observation. But respect is an older beast. Respect often begins as caution. It grows from the sight of consequences. It flowers where there is scarcity, not abundance, where something cannot be easily accessed or dismissed. Words are abundant. Silence is expensive. And people pay different attention to what demands a price. Picture the face of Savonarola, the preacher of Florence, who spoke more than a river speaks. He stood in the pulpit, and fire dripped from his mouth. Even the city's stones seemed to heat beneath him. He spoke and spoke, and spoke until his voice made enemies who didn't argue but acted. He died as a silent heap of ash in the piazza. An unarmed prophet, Machiavelli wrote, will always fail. And yet, the unforgettable part of that story is not the sermons. It's the final image, a rope, a flame, and no last words that could lift his fate. Silence is not mere absence of noise. It is a signal. To be silent is to let others project their fear, their admiration, their confusion. And in conflict, the first person to explain is often the one who concedes that explanation is owed. If you owe nothing, your quiet becomes a wall. Machiavelli's princes cultivated that wall. They used appearance like armor and timing like a blade. They controlled their faces. They made people wait. They punished without emotions and rewarded without enthusiasm. They were not born with some supernatural command. They learned that human beings bow not to the loudest, but to the one who seems least dependent on approval. We've been taught that authenticity means saying everything as it is felt. Machiavelli would smile at that, a tired smile. People who speak every thought are ruled by those who speak almost none. Respect rests on inference. What do others believe you can do? What do they believe you will do? In the absence of words, they will search your record, your posture, your pace, your ability to be unchanged by pressure. People listen with their eyes first. And if the eyes conclude that your silence is the silence of a loaded storm, they will not test the weather. Walk through the years, Machiavelli saw. Florence traded masters. France stomped through Italy like a giant who lost his map. Popes were kings dressed as pastors. Dukes made and unmade cities like sculptors with a hammer's appetite. It was chaos, and in chaos, voices multiply into noise. The ones who survived did not shout above it. They made everyone else quiet down. How? By letting their intentions be guessed and never argued, by moving like a slow tide that moved everything without splash. So ask again, how to be respected without saying a word. The shape of your silence matters. The discipline of your movements matters. The symbol of your presence matters. Machiavelli is not a manual for cruelty. It is a manual for clarity. He knew that people judge on what is seen. Build your scene before you arrive. Decide who you will be when you are watched. Let your name arrive half an hour before you do. Let people carry your weather forecast in their minds, because once they do, they will bring umbrellas even when the sky is blue. This is not charm school. This is the architecture of perception. It begins with what you refuse to do. Refuse to rush. Refuse to bargain with your value by talking it into existence. Refuse to be pulled into arguments that force you to speak for your authority instead of acting from it. A king does not explain his crown. He wears it. The paradox is delicious. The less you say, the more they say about you. And in that chatter, in that fog of guesswork, power is born. Not from being unknowable, no one is, but from being unreadable in the moments when it matters most. The grand strategy of silence is not emptiness. It is the most tightly edited version of you. Machiavelli's world is not gone. Ours simply replaced swords with status updates, thrones with conference rooms, piazzas with feeds. But the machinery inside us, the instinct that bends to presence, is unchanged. You feel it in the shadowy corner of the boardroom where the quiet person sits, and everyone keeps glancing to read their face. You feel it when a police car idles behind you, and suddenly your hands are aware of themselves on the wheel. Authority is a skin we can see even before we read its laws. And the ones who have learned to inhabit that skin without words, they walk lighter and cut deeper. You'll be tempted to answer with slogans, to decorate your power with speeches. Resist. Machiavelli would tell you that men break oaths when it is useful, but they rarely break what is written into their expectations and fears. So write into them, not with letters, but with posture. Not with arguments, but with standards. The language of respect is older than grammar. It is the stance you set before anyone asks you to bend. Start with this scene. Cesare Borgia wakes in the city of Cesena to a problem of his own making, a governor named Ramiro de Orco, whom he had empowered to crush disorder with the speed of a thunderclap. Ramiro did the job too well. He extinguished chaos with brutal efficiency, as instructed, and in doing so, he made the people hate the order they were given. Borgia surveyed the balance. Fear was high, loyalty was low. Words would not mend this. So in the morning, those who went to the piazza found a shocking tableau Ramiro, bisected and displayed on a block. His cruelty punished in public silence, a single message ringing without a voice. The Duke demands order, but despises excess. Results matter. Overreach is not forgiven. The city exhaled. Without a speech, respect returned. Machiavelli writes this not with glee, but with cold precision. A theatrical cruelty, properly deployed, can be more humane than 1,000 kindly speeches that inspire disobedience and invite endless bloodshed. The lesson is unpleasant because it cuts into our illusions. We think persuasion comes from the mouth, but the human animal learns from the eyes. Nothing teaches like a consequence you can see, and nothing commands like a person who can familiarize consequences with daylight. Build suspense with steadiness, that is the craft. Respect comes from the understanding that you are a boundary, and boundaries are not debated, they are encountered. This is why silence serves power. It turns your presence into a border other people discover. Do you let them rush you? Do you let them switch the subject, rewrite the rules, pull you into explanations? Every concession of tempo, of frame, of posture Those are words you gave away without speaking. Machiavelli would say, control the stage, and control begins with the quiet arrangement of the room. The chair that is slightly higher, the table that forces people to face the door where you will appear, the light that falls somewhat behind you so your face is not fully readable, the hour you choose to meet. Waiting is a lesson. Let them learn. There is a secret in psychology. Uncertainty amplifies power. If a dog does not know whether the fence is electric, it will keep its distance. If your gaze sometimes lands heavy and sometimes looks through a person as if they are glass, they will start to measure themselves against a yardstick they cannot entirely see. Too much coldness breeds hatred. Too much warmth breeds presumption. The alternating current of restraint and decisive action. This is the Machiavellian rhythm. The lion and the fox, yes, but also the winter and the spring. The body learns when to wear a coat. Silence is not just the absence of sound. It's a canvas. People project onto it the version of you they most respect or most fear. If you fill the quiet with explanation, you rob them of that work. Consider how a judge enters a courtroom. Few words. A robe, a raised platform, a gavel that speaks once. The ritual paints authority before any sentence is read. If the judge rambled about their principles, if they pleaded for your agreement, the stage collapses. Machiavelli studies this stagecraft under the more dangerous lighting of war and intrigue. But it is the same craft, ritual as silent grammar. Dress is a sentence as well. Not peacocking, never peacocking. It calls too much attention to hunger, and hunger forfeits respect. Understatement is a magnet without its iron showing. A well-worn coat of good quality, a ring that is heavy because it has history, a book on your table with pages actually used. These speak. Do not carry a compulsion to be noticed. Carry a sobriety that makes people measure themselves. The more you insist, the less you are believed. The more you allow space, the more they step carefully. An entourage this Machiavelli knew from watching popes roll through Italy trailing kingdoms at their heels. Your friends, your assistants, your allies, your family. They are portable monuments. If they are chaotic, if they contradict you, if they chatter, if they flinch, all your silence is wasted breath. If they are disciplined, if they answer without looking to you, if they are calm under pressure, then your power exists even when you are absent. That is the real test. How do people behave when you are not present? Borgia made sure his absence was a presence. He hired talent, not flattery. He dismissed those who used his name to bully without need. He knew that every petty tyrant under your umbrella fabricates a storm over your head. Machiavelli also draws a line through time, the control of timing as the control of narrative. He praises Pope Julius II for his impetuous boldness, not because rashness is virtue, but because the moment demanded speed. Julius moved before his enemies could speak, and in doing so, he wrote the script that others had to read. This is the second edge of silence. Strike at the moment when the world expects a speech. Surprise makes its own grammar. When events are moving, do not add your commentary. Add your signature. Later, let others argue over what it meant while you prepare the next move. But there is an opposite art that breathes respect. Refusal. Refuse to answer loaded questions. Refuse to attend every conflict. Refuse to join every gossip ritual. In courts and offices, the truly respected know that the majority of entanglements are traps disguised as invitations to speak. It feels good to correct a rumor. It feels righteous to defend yourself. It is almost always a mistake. By entering the arena of words, you lower the value of your presence and raise the stakes of theirs. Defend your name with conduct, not commentary. If a falsehood harms you, answer it with a change in the map, not a change in the story. Move where it cannot follow. And then there's the thing no one wants to face, the quiet decision to punish. In a family, in a team, in a state if disobedience never hurts, your rules do not exist. You do not respect people by allowing them to erode you. You respect them by treating them as responsible for their choices. Machiavelli is blunt. Injuries must be done at once, so as to be less resented. Benefits should be given slowly, to be more appreciated. Harsh, yes. But look at your own life. Have you not resented the long suffering that never resolves? Do you not remember with clarity the quick, definitive end to a toxic pattern? Clean lines are a gift in a foggy world. Draw them without raising your voice. The suspense that builds around a silent person comes from a simple calculation. If they are in control of themselves, perhaps they are in control of the situation. Self-mastery is a banner you do not need to wave. Everyone can see when a person is not mastered by appetite, by envy, by nerves, by the performance of ego. Machiavelli studied rulers who were eaten by their own wants, who spoke loudly of virtue but trembled at cost. He saw that cities learned to read those tremors and to exploit them. You do not have to be cruel to be respected. You have to be in command of your animal. And that is a full-time job you perform in the privacy of mornings and nights. Finally, there is the manipulation of attention. The more you reveal, the more people can attack. The less you reveal, the more they miss. A fox survives because it leaves no track when it doesn't have to move. When you do move, be unmistakable. The oscillation hidden, then undeniable, teaches the world how to treat you with watchfulness. After that, your words, when you choose them, will fall into ears already trained to listen. Until then, let your posture, your pace, your refusals, your timings, your rituals, and your consequences do the speaking you don't do. Respect follows the one who looks like a standard amid improvisers. There is a knife hidden in all of this, a blade made not of steel but of inference. Most of us think respect is a vote taken after evaluating facts. Machiavelli would disagree. Respect is granted in advance to those who look like they will impose costs if ignored and confer benefits if obeyed. It is a forecast, not a verdict. And forecasts are built from signals, not essays. Once you see this, you see why silence is not just a tactic. It's a philosophy of presence. Words are cheap signals. Any fool can pronounce virtue, declare strength, promise mercy. Costly signals are harder. Self-restraint when provoked, consistency under pressure, discipline when unobserved, action that risks something. Humans, like all social creatures, are wired to respect costly signals because they're harder to fake. The peacock grows absurd feathers because predators can catch it. The cost proves the surplus. Your version of costly signaling might be less dramatic. Showing up early and leaving without fanfare, declining gossip while knowing it would ingratiate you, maintaining standards while it hurts your short-term gain. These create the atmosphere others breathe when they enter your orbit. They begin to respect you because you respect something more than your feelings. Without that, silence is suspicion. With it, silence is gravity. Now bring in Machiavelli's favorite pair, Fortuna and Virtue. Fortune is the weather, virtue the sail. Fortune throws storms and calm seas without asking what is fair. Virtue is the capacity to use whatever wind arrives. The quiet person who commands respect is not simply quiet. They are designed to handle the variance of fortune. Their routines are not monkish for ornament, they are armor. A prince who waits for perfect conditions will be betrayed by weather. A leader who needs to explain every storm will exhaust trust. By building a life that works when fortune is harsh, you become the kind of person who doesn't need to talk their way out of the next gale. People respect that scent. It smells like shelter. Consider Julius Caesar, or later Augustus, who mastered the art of appearing to restore the Republic while quietly building an empire. He wore simple clothes. He kept the Senate alive as theater. He let others find language for the new order while he controlled the coins, the legions, the time. He called himself princeps first among equals. The genius was this. He reframed a monarchy as continuity, and he did it more with rituals than with proclamations. This is Machiavellian not because it is sinister, but because it recognizes that power is not numbers on a board. It is pattern recognition in minds. Worry about how people will explain you to themselves when you are not there. Build for that. Your words cannot do that job. Your architecture can. Here is the deeper turn. Respect is not simply fear. Fear makes people comply in the moment. Respect persuades them to preserve your role, even when you're not watching. Machiavelli knew the taste of hatred and warned against it. He wrote that it is much safer to be feared than loved, if you must choose, but safer still to avoid being hated by the people. A hated silence is a void that breeds conspiracies. A respected silence is a chamber where his allies keep their voice low even when you are absent. The difference? Justice. If your quiet authority contains a logic that feels fair even if it is severe, people accept it as weather rather than tyranny. The guardrails of a road are hard metal. Still, most drivers are grateful for them at the cliff's edge. Unchecked silence can rot into paranoia. Tacitus tells us of Tiberius, a man whose silences froze the Senate, who spoke so little and punished so unpredictably that everyone became an actor in a theater of fear. Respect degraded into brittle obedience. The state became a whispering hall where even walls acquired ears. Machiavelli would fold this into his ledger. Use silence to create predictability, not anxiety. In predicting your responses, others find room to act without calculating risk at every step. They respect you because they can anticipate the cost of crossing you and the value of cooperating. This middle ground between terror and charm is where lasting power sits. And you cannot reach it with speeches. You build it with reasonable boundaries, seen and felt. Extend the logic to institutions. Machiavelli admired republics because laws act as silent rulers, predictable, general, impartial when well designed. A tyrant must constantly speak, constantly threaten, constantly reward to maintain respect. A republic can be silent because a citizen knows the rules operate whether or not a person is watching. The most respected rulers engineer their own redundancy. They make their standards so clear that even their absence enforces them. This is why a disciplined household feels different. A disciplined company likewise. The effect is symphonic. Small actions recur, small rituals stack, confidence returns. There is a city-sized sigh of relief when the rules do not change every morning based on a mood. Back to you. The metaphysics of your silence reside in one thing: sovereignty, not of a nation, but of a self. Machiavelli did not write love letters to cruelty. He wrote an owner's manual for reality, where sovereignty means the power to decide what you will and will not be moved by. The silent person earns respect by refusing to be gamed by the two tricks that ruin most of us: the need to be liked and the need to be understood. If you can walk through a misunderstanding without attacking it, because your conduct will correct it in time, you are already rarer than a clear day in politics. If you can walk through disapproval without bargaining your standards away, your quiet becomes a floor others can stand on when their own feet shake. The lion and the fox. You cannot simply be iron. Iron rusts when it sits in rain. The fox notices the rain and moves under the eaves. Silence without perception is just stubbornness. You need to see what others refuse to admit. The alliance is built in hallways. The incentives beneath a smile. The difference between a mistake and a test. Words often hide these currents. Silence reveals them because it forces you to look longer. It makes others fill the air, and in filling it, they reveal themselves. The one who speaks least often learns most. We have to abandon one last illusion, that speaking virtue creates virtue. Machiavelli watched Florentines proclaim moral renewal under Savonarola, only to return to vice under new management. He learned that virtue is a habit, and habit is a climate. If you want the respect of a team, make punctuality a climate. Make accountability a climate. Make excellence boring. Then, When you do speak, your words arise from a place that already exists. They sound like weather forecasts, not intentions. And people respect weather they can trust. Respect without words is not a trick to avoid accountability. It is a method to make accountability visible. Every time you enforce a boundary calmly, every time you follow through without announcement, every time you underreact to provocation and over-deliver on a promise, you teach the world a language. After a few lessons, they will speak it even when you are silent. That is power without noise. That is Machiavelli's truth beneath the scandal of his name. There is a loneliness to this. The person who builds an aura without announcements also builds a distance. People project onto silence not just fear or respect, but also fantasies and suspicions. You can be misunderstood for years. You can be judged as cold by warm talkers, as arrogant by those who need confirmation, as manipulative by those who have only seen manipulation. Use silence to hide. This is the tax. Machiavelli would tell you to pay it carefully. Do not become a statue. Statues crack. They do not listen. They do not change. Emotional gravity isn't cold. It is a slow tide, not an icebox. In your home, in your work, in the city of your own influence, respect grows when people can rest against your consistency. Speak less, yes, but when you do speak, be generous with clarity. Machiavelli feared hatred because it is a crack in the dam. Once people believe you are unjust, they feel righteous in breaking you. So make your severity legible. Explain the law once, while eyes are on you. Then live it until words are unnecessary. A house of rules is a house of freedom, because no one has to keep guessing. People cannot relax in fog. Apply this to things as small as posture and as large as policy. In a room, keep your back straight and your breathing visible. Don't fidget. Fidgeting smells like insecurity, and insecurity invites tests. Meet eyes briefly, not as a challenge, but as a confirmation. I see you, then release. If someone speaks to you with force, slow down. Make pauses. Pauses are the punctuation of power. They tell the room that your tempo is the tempo of the meeting. Don't inflict silence, inhabit it. It should feel like the quiet before music starts, not the quiet after an explosion. Dress the way a promise dresses. Simple, precise, repaired when damaged. You are not a billboard. You are a standard. Standards do not argue. They are witnessed and measured against. Keep a schedule and defend it. People respect those who protect their time because it proves they will also protect commitments. If you say you will leave a party at 10, leave. If you say you will deliver a draft on Friday, deliver it. Each kept promise makes your silence heavier. People stop asking for reasons and start arranging themselves around your rhythm. Your calendar becomes a silent constitution. Forgiveness, given quietly, is stronger than a speech of reconciliation. Choose one mercy that others notice. It should be specific and undeserved, but strategic. Forgive something you could punish to show that you do not need to. Not because you are soft, but because your power is intact. Mercy is a message. You are not ruled by grievance. Alongside this, construct one non-negotiable. It should be a red line no one tests twice. When it is crossed, act immediately, fairly, and without anger. Rage is a leak in the hull. Anger makes punishment personal, and personal punishment invites vendettas. Cold enforcement builds respect because it feels like gravity, not like vengeance. This is where the heart sits in the machine. Silence without love becomes a prison. Silence with love becomes a sanctuary. Machiavelli knows nothing of your affections, but he knows that people are happier obeying laws that feel aimed at the general good. If your quiet presence is animated by care for the whole, your team, your friends, your city, then your actions, even when sharp, will be read differently. People forgive a surgeon. They hate a butcher. The same knife, different intention. Let your silence hold warmth like a hearth. that does not flicker with every gust. But do not assume that good intentions absolve unclear action. A parent who never enforces bedtime with consistency does not love more. They love less efficiently. A leader who endlessly empathizes without ever drawing a map is not kind. They are postponing a collision. Respect grows where people can predict the weather, even when they dislike the season. Write seasons into your work. Make clear when you are available and when you are not, when debate is invited and when the decision is made, when the door is open and when the door is closed. Rituals tell the truth in ways explanations never will. And then there is the most intimate respect of all, the respect you owe yourself. If you dread your own reflection, your silence will sound like shame, not gravity. Build a small practice that no one sees and no one can take, from which your presence draws strength. Wake before the house wakes. Read a page before the world asks you to perform. Sweat in private. Keep one vow that only you can witness. When you walk into a room carrying this unseen weight, people feel it. It looks like self-possession because it is. You aren't asking the room for permission to exist. You are bringing a world you already govern. Suffering is part of it. Machiavelli wrote The Prince after torture, after exile, after watching his city thrown between holy men and warlords, after arranging chairs for people who would later burn the table. He knew the cost of believing that words can save you when circumstances will not. Respect without words is not a flex. It is a shelter you build because weather exists. And when the storm comes, the people who laughed at your careful lines will ask to come inside. If you deny them, do so silently. If you admit them, do so without gloating. You're not worshiping strength. You're stewarding order. Beware the seduction of becoming unreadable to yourself. If you ignore your feelings long enough, they stop visiting. A silent person can turn into an empty vessel dressed in iron. That is not respect. That is brittle. Keep 3 people who can tell you the truth. Find one space where you do not have to carry your weather. Tell one story, occasionally, about your own failures, not to lower yourself, but to install a safety valve. Humans respect steel that can bend and return to form. They resent iron that shatters and cuts everyone. Think of the night watchman of a city. He doesn't trumpet his presence. He clears the lanes and he tests the lanterns. He checks the locks. He looks for the one loose hinge that will become an invitation to thieves. When the city wakes, it believes the morning came all by itself. The watchman is not applauded. He is respected by those who know how the night can behave. This is your role if you choose it. You will not be celebrated for your silence. But in a world of noise and flares, in a century of comment sections, your steady quiet will be a kind of relief. It will be mistaken for aloofness by some. Let it be. Machiavelli would say the people who need constant reassurance do not follow long anyway. The ones who appreciate order will come to you because they can breathe in your presence. Ask yourself now, what are your Ramiro de Orcos? What habits did you empower to create order that have grown cruel in themselves? Execute them in public, meaning change something visibly. Remove the needless cruelty from your systems, your sarcasm, your procrastination as punishment, your passive aggression as policy. Make a scene of their end, then resume quiet order. Respect follows competence more than charm. Competence, in the deepest sense, is 100 small, silent decisions made at the speed of character. In the dust of Florence, they still whisper the names that built the city and burned it. You can walk past the church where Savonarola thundered and see the square where he was unmade by flame. You can wander the halls where Machiavelli tried to sell a book as a passport back to relevance. A book that has become the most famous job application in history. Between the stone and the ink is the lesson you came for. Stop asking words to do a job they cannot do. Speak less. Arrange more. Decide what you will be, and let the world meet it, and let them learn. There is an old Roman story of Cincinnatus, called from his plow to be dictator in a crisis. He took the role, fixed the crisis with ruthless speed, and returned to the plow. No self-advertisement, no speeches about humility. He resolved what needed resolving, then allowed his silence to explain his character. Whether this story is mythic hardly matters. Its power comes from the portrait of respect gifted to someone who did not perform a desire for it. He let the harvest be his applause. In your life, you may never command a city. You may never punish a Ramiro. But you entered this wanting a kind of respect that doesn't evaporate when you leave the room. So begin small. Arrive with your work already done. Say only what adds. Let your yes be yes, and your no be no. Punish betrayal with removal, not with theater. Reward loyalty with trust more than trinkets. Make your standards a public secret. Watch how the tone of every room changes when you smile less often, but mean it more. When you ask one question and wait for the full answer. When you refuse to take bait. When you don't explain your price. You will be told this is manipulation. It is not. Manipulation is theater without consequences. It relies on deceiving others to extract unearned benefits. Respect without words is the opposite. It makes consequences legible and puts your own skin at stake. It is, in Machiavelli's wild realism, a way of being honest about how people actually change and behave. Not with lectures, with the friction of reality, with the weight of standards. Look at the age we live in. Voices everywhere, credibility nowhere. Everyone explaining, few delivering. Arguments about arguments. Performances about authenticity that, strangely, feel less human than the silence of someone who is simply present, reliable, unshaken. In such a world, you don't have to be a prince to be Machiavellian in the best sense. You only have to be the person who knows that character is a quiet architecture, built in mornings you cannot post, and in nights no one witnesses. Remember the last time you were with someone truly calm, not numb, not polite calm. How their sentences landed like anchors. How their pauses made you choose your words more carefully. How you felt yourself become better, or at least more deliberate, simply by being near them. That is the effect you're after, and it cannot be faked with tone or borrowed with quotes. It is made of long fidelity to a small number of principles. Do as you say. Do not babble. Do not rush. Do not beg. Be generous when it costs you a little. Be iron when it would be easier to be foam. The day will come when you have to choose between being liked in the moment or being respected in the long run. Choose like a gardener, not a performer. Plant the tree whose shade you'll not entirely enjoy. Build the routine that replaces the speech. Accept that some will slander your silence. Accept that some will envy your autonomy. Accept that respect is not the same as love, and that both are earned by different means. If you can balance them, you will be rare. If you cannot, choose to be respected for the right reasons, and let love gather over time like moss on old stone. Machiavelli's Florence is gone, but the test is the same. When you enter a room, do people adjust? Not flinch, not flatter adjust. Do they sit up a little? Do the chaotic ones go quiet and the serious ones relax? That is the diagnostic. If not, build. If so, protect it. There will be pressure to dilute yourself into accessibility, to apologize for standards in a world that treats standards like insults. Don't. Be available, not accessible. Be generous, not malleable. Tenderness is not flinching. Strength is not hardness. Aim for that stillness that comes from knowing what you are doing and why. One last thought from the man who has been called a teacher of devils and a mirror for princes. Men judge more by the eyes than by the hands. He meant that we trust what we see more than what we cannot immediately feel. Show the sight that teaches them. Let them see outcomes. Let them see rhythm. Let them see the punishment once and the mercy often. Let them see you endure. Then close your mouth and let time do its work. If this opened your eyes, subscribe to Boring History, because the truth is never boring.